In an old house in the interior of New Hampshire, surrounded by a fog that seemed always present, the walls held more than memories. They held resistance. Outside, time dragged on in gray. Leafless trees cast crooked shadows across the porch. But inside, there was too much silence for a home that once knew laughter. The imaginary camera approaches the front door, slightly ajar, as if waiting for someone to return. Inside, the sound of the wall clock echoed like the beat of an anxious heart. It was the only living thing there. The wooden floor creaked under non-existent footsteps. Faded picture frames were tilted, as if the house itself had given up on maintaining its appearance. Upstairs, a bedroom had remained untouched since 2019. Clothes folded, bed made, a glass of evaporated water on the nightstand. Like an altar for someone who didn't die, just emotionally disappeared. He was called Daniel. 34 years old, systems engineer, methodical, successful, and empty. On the outside, everything was control. His house was clean, his schedule was strict, his words were measured. But inside it was chaos that he refused to face. On social media, Daniel was impeccable. Coffee with perfect foam, motivational phrases, morning workouts, dinners in restaurants with symmetrical dishes. But no one knew that when he hung up the phone. He didn't call anyone, not even for you. Love passed him by 3 times. The first time, at 23, he cut off contact when she cried because she felt ignored. On Monday, at 27, he disappeared without saying anything after a fight about vulnerability. The third time, at 32, he simply refused to say, "I love you." Not because I didn't feel it, but because saying so would be giving up control. Deep down, Daniel confused delivery with loss. I loved what I didn't need to keep. I liked the idea of someone, but not the actual presence. It was safer to admire than to live with. The scenes come and go like intrusive memories. One of them, from a rainy Sunday. Daniel watched a woman pack her suitcase, saying with her eyes everything that her mouth could no longer repeat. He didn't react. He remained with his arms crossed, like a judge who had already given his sentence. And when she left, the lights in the house flickered, as if the place also knew it had lost something essential. Years passed. Daniel was still alone. Time respected him too much, passing slowly. Each birthday was quieter. Every message viewed and unanswered was a reminder that he had built walls too high to be reached. At work he was praised for his efficiency. But no one noticed that his eyes were always slightly red, not from tiredness, but from silence. At home, he sometimes spoke to himself, as if he was rehearsing dialogues that he never had the courage to live. One day, a young neighbor knocked on his door. He had recently moved and needed help with the heater. Daniel helped. Fast, precise, without creating space for conversation. She thanked him and commented, "You look sad." He smirked, but that comment stuck with him like an unacknowledged truth. Over the next few days, he began to notice that the streetlights in front of him flickered whenever he arrived. Small detail, but strange. As if the world around him was trying to call him back to reality. Then one night, while reviewing spreadsheets on the computer, he heard a dull sound coming from the upstairs bedroom. The same one he hadn't been in for years. He went up with hesitant steps. When he opened the door, nothing had changed, but everything seemed darker. He touched the switch. The light flickered. On the dressing table mirror, a message written with steam. "Are you still in there?" Daniel backed away. He tried to rationalize. Humidity, condensation. But the house seemed alive at that moment. It was as if the feelings he had locked away had taken shape. Flashbacks invaded his mind. Clothes thrown on the floor from an old argument, an ignored call, a tear held back by pride. Memories he had filed away came back more vividly than he would have liked. In the following weeks, Daniel began to avoid the mirror. I spent less time at home. I worked more, but nothing seemed to fill it. The order that once gave him security was now suffocating. Each symmetrically placed object seemed to mock its internal asymmetry. One morning he found an envelope in his mailbox. No sender. Just an old photo. Him and the second woman he loved, sitting in the park, smiling with sincere eyes. On the back, hand scribbled, "This was real. You're the one who wasn't." From then on, something in him began to give way. He started walking aimlessly in the late afternoons, watching strangers talking, couples arguing, children crying, old people laughing. Little human moments, real, imperfect. And for the first time, Daniel felt jealous not of achievement, but of connection. The house, once cold, now seemed to echo the missing sounds. Sometimes he swore he heard footsteps when he was lying down. In others, the sound of a sigh coming from the hallway. But it wasn't fear. It was longing. From you. One day, he opened his closet and took out a box he had avoided for years. Letters never sent, old photos, notes left on the mirror. Memories he pretended didn't matter. He read everything in silence. He cried like someone saying goodbye to their own pride. That night, he went downstairs and sat in the dark room. He left the phone away. No music, no distractions. Just him and the loneliness that was now no longer the enemy. It was company. And in the silence, he realized the ego doesn't want love. It wants control. But control never hugged him when he needed it. Outside, it started to snow, shy but constant flakes. Daniel got up, walked to the window, and looked out as someone who finally accepted that he couldn't change what he'd been through. But he could choose what to allow in. Days later, he showed up at the neighbor's door, not with tools but with coffee. She smiled, surprised. He just said, "Today I wanted to talk, if you could." Inside the house, the lights didn't flicker. For the first time in years, they stood firm, because love can be unpredictable. It might hurt. It may fail. But it's real. And control. Control is only useful for those who prefer to survive rather than live. If you felt something in this story, maybe it's time to let go of control. Maybe it's time to let someone in, even if it's you. Share this video with those who still confuse power with protection, because true love begins where the ego ends.